welcome back to another game dev vlog. This is number 66, I believe. So, starting off on Monday, I was able to go through um, the rest of the level and add cover to all the relevant places within the game. So every kind of room where there's going to be enemy patrols, I went in and added cover lines and cover points, as you can see here. And it was a bit tricky. I had to kind of work through. For the most part, I've set up cover lines before, but there's always these little cases where you have to iron out, like make sure all the green connect. And I kind of had to test each one of them to make sure that, you know, the player's not rubbing on the actual obstacles, and then he doesn't actually. And then the trickiest part is actually sometimes I had to figure out how to get these corners working. So sometimes you'd go into a sharp corner and not be able to get back out of it, or it would make you leave the actual cover altogether. So, but at the end of the day, yeah, see, there's also, it's like, I have to make like a tool to like kind of recheck, because some of these get broken. You kind of have to go in here and manually adjust these handles to kind of reconnect. And if you walk away from it, then all of a sudden, you know, they get, so I'll have to make another pass to validate, or have a tool to kind of validate that, you know, all the cover is connected completely. That hasn't gone broken on me. Usually it stays intact, but yeah, it's like checking over again. I have to see if it's actually gone and get broken. Usually it gets broken if you actually select the cover line and it resets, but I don't know, it's just one of these things. But I went through and yeah, see, like this, it doesn't, it's all broken from where I left it, so I'll have to go and at some point revalidate the cover. But I went and added cover to pretty much every relevant one throughout the level for every single scene in the game. So now we're pretty good on basic cover. So there might be a need for adding additional as I go and test gameplay, but right now most of the obvious cover has been done, and that was pretty much what I took care of on Monday. So one of the issues I faced this week was an issue with my actual coding editor, Visual Studio Code. That's been a reliable tool. It's been working for me for a very long time now, but ever since they did like an update, they tried to add some AI stuff to it or something. It actually broke my IntelliSense. So I was trying to, as my next step, I was actually trying to implement behavior for the security camera here. Instead of just a prop, I had to add things to it, like a controller to make it move left and right, all these, you know, different things to make it track and follow the target. So that was my project after I added the cover, adding functionality to this camera. And the issue was my code editor, VS Code, had actually, it broke the IntelliSense and autocomplete, which means it's pretty much, it became a useless tool. Like if you have to type everything out letter for letter and there's no autocomplete or error checking, it's no good. So it's been a free tool. It's been a good tool, decent tool. I always liked using it, but it pretty much became a tool that was no longer functional, and I tried to fix it. I tried to repair it, but it just, you know, the plugins were deprecated, and it was just, working with AI, like why I can't get this to work anymore. Autocomplete is dead, right? It's like I pretty much came to the conclusion, like, well, let's try another IDE then, right? I didn't want to because there's this whole thing moving it over to an IDE, but at this point, Visual Studio Code it's not functional. I need a full functional tool to actually code in-game logic in C Sharp like I'm accustomed to. So I had installed um, the other Visual Studio, which is Visual Studio Community. I chose not to use that one. It's a more advanced one, and I don't really like the user experience interface as much as VS Code, but I tried to get it to work with my project, and for some reason it would try to load the project, like, what was it, 300 uh, files or whatever, rather large, and it would consume all my computer's memory and then just proceed to hang and not load and not function. So um, before that, I had installed a program called Writer, and that was a recommended IDE, um, as supported. Unity only supports a handful of IDEs that you connect to Unity directly, and so what I after messing around with Visual Studio Community a little bit and figuring out that didn't work either, I installed Writer and I started working with Writer, and that that worked right away. But um, and I started to figure out basic functionality that I used to have with VS Code, stuff like how to do debugging, doing things like, yeah, figuring out how to use the debugger, figuring out how to search for files and stuff on a very basic level, just so I can get my hands dirty with the new IDE. And the problem with Writer is that it's a paid. You have to pay for it if you're using it commercially. Um, and I kind of wanted to avoid that to do code, but um, after working with Writer for a while, I am kind of pleasantly surprised on what it's able to do. It's a lot different, but I'm still kind of learning and getting experience with the IDE, trying to get comparable functionality. As long as it has like base functionality, like bookmarks and as long what the important thing is that with Writer, the autocomplete and the error handling was working correctly right out of the box. I didn't have to sit here and do a bunch of configuration. It seems like this IDE was designed with working with Unity projects in mind, unlike the Visual Studio Community that just didn't work very well. So even though it's paid, it's actually well supported working with Unity projects. So I'll continue to use this IDE and get more familiar with it. But so that took a bit of time to kind of figure out. Also, I was actually having some issues with my Unity. I've been working on 6.0, and for some reason I was getting these random freezes while working in the editor, where I'd have to kind of hard exit the app, and I would actually lose work from unsaved scenes, and that happened several times where it just randomly freeze on me. Um, so I decided to upgrade to 6.2. It's been a while since I upgraded the Unity editor, and that took a while to do, but I eventually got it up and running again after it wasn't too painful. There's a couple things I had to take care of, but um, after that, I like I said, I was working on the security camera, and I had to switch over to Rider, new IDE, and I pretty much spent all Tuesday kind of messing around with this new IDE and figuring something out. Um, One of the problems I was fixing a lot of small issues, and what was happening, I kind of had to figure out how to do tracing in this new IDE, and for the life of me, I couldn't find this one. I was trying to find for the enemies. There was this gizmo on the enemy gun. I think it was like an aim reference or something, but I couldn't locate it in the code anywhere, and for the life of me, I couldn't find exactly where in the Biomutant, where it was being shown from, like where was it? Was it, uh, there's like there's two different debug menus. Which was it? Was it locked? There's a whole bunch. So it's like which actual option is controlling this laser beam? I want to turn it off. And for the life of me, I could not track the damn thing down, and it could be anywhere too. Like I was trying to do searching for keywords like red or gizmo draw a line or debug draw a line, but I just could not narrow it down to where it was. I finally, after working for like an hour or two, I finally remembered that in order to control that, it's actually this one little option down here called debug aim. That's where it controlled. But working with a new ID, my actual searching and tracing, it was just a lot tougher until I get used to this new IDE to actually find things from clues within the code base if I don't know where they are without little tools. But I finally got that done. So it's just going to take a little bit of time working with the new IDE to get more experience with how to do searches on for classes, searches for global string matches, things like that. So that's just one of the issues I encountered this week. So after I got all that working, I was able to get the security camera functionality working, and I'm pretty happy with that, how it came out. I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I do this thing here, right? Like, you know, I always try to avoid, doing VFX from scratch, like I always want to see if I can repurpose like some sort of VFX that I already have. And it turns out I did have some sort of VFX for this. It was like this little VFX that was meant for something else. It was actually like a floor ground indicator. And what I did is I actually inverted it and stretched it out, and it worked out just nicely. It has the exact effect I was looking for. So like a cone shape, and then I added a spotlight of the same color, and that really did the trick. So, and then working with AI and making a new controller, I was able to implement functionality to do some sort of not with an animator, but just like a basic rotation over time. And then of course we have ray detection of the collider to collider basic. So what you have here on detection, now it switches into a different color, and it has like a follow with a it has a follow with a limit, so it won't go completely around, but it'll go to the extreme. It took a bit of doing to figure out how to do that, to make sure it all works correctly. And then it has a timer to say, you can see a target loss timer. As soon as that goes to 0, it'll resume its cycle of going back to blue, as we can see pretty soon here. So, always with these things, new functionality, it always takes a lot of testing and making sure everything's working as intended. So now I have detection, and I can hook that into maybe like an alert state to spawn enemies and whatnot later on down the line. But the basic core functionality of a security camera right now is working, and I can expand upon that for like turrets and stuff. But so that's um, that's what I did on Tuesday, Wednesday. Um, let's see. Um, so at this point, I was trying to figure out where to go next with my functionality after I got that done. I was spending a little bit of time this week kind of wearing my game designer hat and be like, okay, you know, because now it's like, okay, I need to hook up the alert functionality, but what happens when I get alerted, right? Like, so I set up another enemy, and kind of did a bunch of testing, um, with what happens if, just just testing on this cover here, and kind of testing, just a basic situation. I did some AI testing, but actually caught some, just have another enemy in this hall doing basic control. I actually caught some issues with him being able to see you through cover, if he's too close on his radius. Like, um, but yeah, so I had to iron out some issues, more issues with AI. Um, but I was still trying to half consider like game design. Ooh, he actually almost saw me there. But I kind of had to make sure that, and this, maybe just I don't want to have to test all cover out. Ooh, he's a sneaky one. He almost saw me again. But essentially, I had to kind of adjust the cover a bit. I kind of wanted to make a system where if you're in cover, like you kind of ensure that you are not able to be spotted very easily, but at the same time, you can't just say if you're in cover. If he's at a different angle, like over here looking at you, he should be able to spot you. So I made some improvements to how you can be detected in cover. One of the main problems is if he walks past you close to you and you're in cover, if he was within his like main detection radius, um, he would actually spot you and it would be an instant alert, regardless if he could actually see you through cover. So I had to fix that, and just a bunch of small stuff. So, um, but like I said, at this point I was um, kind of thinking about game design, like how am I going to handle the enemy player evasion on alert. And I was kind of messing around with and doing a bunch of testing with like stamina. I was thinking about like a stamina system where if you're in the alert state and you're running from him, maybe at some point you kind of slow down, just kind of allow the AI to catch up with you or something, because I can't really, and this is like gameplay design, planning and thinking about, how the gameplay will work, and because you can't really rely even on the early stages, like for the enemy to hit you once and then you instantly transition to like an injured state and you slow down that way. But I wanted to make sure that if you're being chased, you can't just always outpace the enemy. So I was doing a testing, and with concepts like having you can run at a normal speed when not alerted, and there's no stamina cost. But when you are alerted, after some point, you kind of lose your speed, and the enemy can actually catch up to you. Things like that. I didn't do any hard implementation on that, but it's just thinking about these gameplay concepts when you're actually playing the game and how to balance the game appropriately. Um, um, so I kind of, at this point, I'm kind of, doing more thinking about, um, for this next room. I have one enemy, but kind of reviewing my enemies list and kind of saying, okay, what's the next enemy I'm going to add to the enemy set, because there need to be a variety of enemies. Right now I have one enemy, and there needs to be more enemies. It's like, which one I'm going to add next, and just kind of general thinking, kind of brainstorming, um, the next steps in the project. So I kind of fixed a small. I spent the time on Wednesday fixing a handful of small annoyances. Like there was like this dialogue bark error, and I was kind of having issues with VCAM assignment in the editor, like I usually do. It was giving me issues. I kind of had to iron out a few more issues. And yeah, and that's pretty much what happened on Wednesday. Um, so on Thursday, I kind of got serious and I said, okay, I'm gonna tackle the enemy spawn system because now there's a functional need for, let's just say, you're over here. Even if the hallway's empty, there's no enemies. Like, what happens when you're spotted by a camera? You would expect something to happen, not just sound effects and alert, but you'd expect maybe enemies to come out and chase you around, right? Some sort of actual threat, not just this idle camera, kind of like in Metal Gear Solid or something, right? Um, so how would I actually do that, right? How would I spawn enemies? So I was just thinking of a concept, a general overview of a like an enemy spawn system. So um, essentially, I kind of turned to the idea that I had done before, and um, I had done something first with like rain tiles, and I had done something with light tile and expanded that to kind of like light tiles as well. And I thought that, I could, like, my initial simple implementation would be like, okay, just put markers manually all throughout the area, and if you get spotted, then we spawn enemies at one of these markers. Well, that's not really gonna work because it there's still the matter of like which marker do you choose, right? You kind of have to take into variables like where is the player at the time, and which direction is the player moving. um, so depending on these variables, the actual candidate for a spawn location changes. um, and I need a more dynamic system, and that kind of made me think about maybe using this grid tile system that I used before. So in order to do that, I kind of had to revisit my implementation of what I was doing with these grid tiles, how the system worked, how to set up and generate grid, and also to build on top of that, to repurpose the grid system for an enemy spawn system, right? I had also noticed previously in my testing that my light grid for one of these levels that it's up was not quite sufficient. I was getting light pop in when the light was still visible by the camera frustum. I had to implement some sort of functionality to account for not only just where the player, uh, not only where the player position is, but um, not only where the player position is, but also take into account the actual frustum of the camera here, right? And that way it would turn off and turn on lights appropriately. Let's see if I can actually. Okay, I don't have any lights. Let's see if I can actually get rid of this. And you can actually see it in action here. I applied the lights, the lights frustrum tiles to the actual this level actually as well. So what you'll see is that now it's just not going to do like a radius for where the player is, but it's also going to do a larger radius, but it's also going to cut out the active tiles of the light where the actual camera can't see, right? So I'll just move around and show you kind of. You can take a look at the lights and see how the lights operate. You see how the lights, they kind of. Go here. You see, it gives it ample space. Like these lights are going off now, but you know these lights over here are not operational. It's not until you start moving back where the frustrum is getting closer to it, and that gives a good solution, like a wide enough solution all the way around where at no point will will the light be off when the camera can see it and then turn on, and you get this light turn off and on effect. That I added that functionality to the lights, and it's actually working a lot better. And I needed something like that to work with the enemy spawning system. So I made sure that the rain tiles were still working with these new changes to the system, but then I actually did the work um, to implement a um, a controller here. Let's see if I can get it up. Yeah. A controller to the same thing like an enemy spawn controller that would handle all the parameters of generating all these tiles. And I've had gizmos here to kind of debug and figure out. I don't think the solution is overkill because I can kind of demonstrate what it's doing, but um, as you can see, the yellow is the tile that you're currently in. The blue is the active candidate tiles. Like the algorithm will take however many steps, like up to a maximum of 3 steps. So that's 1, 2, 3 concentric circles that's active. It'll filter out everything that's not within the ground, that's not within the actual sector. And I can also just make sure that enemy spawns happen within the sector or include other sectors as well. And I had to figure out a system to kind of place these navigation points for enemies to spawn at. And they had to be a navigation hit on the actual floor, but some of them are not. They are technically valid, but they get really close to the edge, or there's these edge cases where it'll actually spawn on the other side of the wall because I wasn't, I was a little, some of these the nav mesh actually goes outside the wall because I wasn't careful enough in my level construction. So what I've done here is I've actually learned how to do editor handles where you can interact with these gizmo objects, and it'll tell you can execute an action on them, whether it'll tell you where it is or it'll select the relevant object so you can edit it, move it. I just want to be able to select it and actually delete the inappropriate navigation points. So any navigation point the system selects, that's where a possible enemy could spawn within the tile. So I have to do a little bit of manual curation, but as you can see in the demo, the algorithm will take into account what direction you're moving, and it'll shoot for picking a tile that's not the one right next to it, that is like outside the camera frustrum, not inside. So anything inside the camera frustrum is not a candidate, not blue. It's not considered. But depending on where you're moving at the time that you enter the um, the new tile, it'll choose one in the forward direction, and then if it doesn't find one, it'll actually choose a tile within the forward 180, and if it still can't find something, it'll choose a tile in a total 360, a valid tile. So there's a whole algorithm going on there, a lot of complexity, a lot of testing. This was really Thursday and Friday was I was deep into coding and building this new system, this functionality, and I think it's working pretty good for the most part. I still have to do a lot of testing, but it kind of essentially does what I'm wanting it to do. Now, the other part of this is actually spawning the enemy and managing the enemies that are spawned. That's a whole nother thing for next week. But as far as picking a spot based on the enemy or the player movement or where to spawn the enemy, I've come pretty close to this, getting a decent solution that can kind of dynamically pick at any moment where to where to appropriately spawn an enemy so that he's in front of the player. So the idea is that if you're trying to evade and go this direction, all of a sudden you'll get an enemy spawn right in front of you, things like that. So, um, doing a lot of testing. There's still more kinks to iron out, like things like this where it's you're going this way, but it can't find a valid spot in front of you because of the camera frustrum. Um, and it can't find one close enough far away with this path, so it chooses one over here, which is technically valid, but there's little things like that, or sometimes there's a case where if you go like here, um, it won't be able to simply cannot find uh, a candidate tile. What do I? There's things to consider, like how do I handle that situation where you're in an active state, but the system can't actually find an appropriate place to spawn an enemy at this time here. So there's still more work to be done, but there's a the foundation, the system are in place. I think I can make this work, and that's the whole thing for next week is to make this work a little bit better, get the enemy spawn despawn part management correct for next week, and then I'll have a system that can actually spawn in and despawn enemies, and I can build off that for different things, like if you're doing like a defense sequence or something like that. But um, yeah, that's pretty much what I took care of this week. So it kind of felt that um, I didn't get a huge amount done, but I was actually a part of, a few, several hours this week. Um, I was actually considering game design. So instead of just coding all week long, I was actually putting on my game designer hat and doing a little bit of consideration about, how the gameplay should function and trying to balance out, mechanics so it's the game feels balanced, challenging but fair, but not too easy, where the player can just simply cheese the whole game, no problem. So that's what I'm going for. So that's pretty much all I have to discuss this week. We covered a lot, but we will continue on down the road. And thanks for joining us time. We will talk to you next time.